who's thought of it. Yeah. That? Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm leading ring by ring. Yeah.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Madison. Welcome to this joyful occasion as we gather to install Kelly Jane Crocker and Kelly Weisman Asprooth-Jackson as our co-senior ministers. Welcome to the members of this congregation, friends in our local community, family, friends, and colleagues of Kelly and Kelly, and anyone and everyone here in person or online, joining to celebrate this moment in the life of FUS. Thank you for being with us today. If you're watching at home, we want to remind you that you can click the link for the order of service found under the video. You will need that program for the act of installation.
Please rise in body and or spirit to sing together our opening hymn and processional, number 358, rank by rank again we stand.
Rank by rank again we stand, from the four winds gathered hither, loud the hallowed walls demand, whence we come and how and whither, from their stillness breaking clear, echoes awake to warn or cheer, higher truth from saint and seer, call to us assembled here. Ours the year's memorial store, honored days and names we reckon, days of comrades gone before, lives that speak and deeds that beckon, from the dreaming of the night to the labors of the day, shines their everlasting light, guiding us upon our way. Though the path be hard and long, still we strive in expectation. Join we now their ageless song, one with them in aspiration, one in name, in honor, one. Guard we well the crown they won, what they dreamed be ours to do. Hope their hopes and seal them true.
Please be seated.
With the kindling of this flame,
we reaffirm our commitment
to make integrity of life our first aim,
to leave thought free
and to promote truth, righteousness, reverence, and charity among all.
Here, we have gathered from places as far east as Pennsylvania and New York, as far south as Tucson, Arizona, as far west as Portland and Seattle, as far north as White Bear, Minnesota. Gathered on-site and online, we are using technologies that were distant dreams when this congregation was first convened. Here, we have gathered with the breath of our ancestors, the ancestors of this land, the Ho-Chunk, who call this home Dejop. The ancestors of this congregation, the bond of union riders, the stone haulers, the lay leaders of the ages. We are gathered with the ancestors of these two ministers, the predecessors and the mentors, the beloveds who have loved these two ministers into being. Without these folks who gathered prior, we would not be where and who we are today. Here we have gathered in anticipation of the generations yet to come. Those who will embrace change that we can only dream of. Those who will create beloved community building upon our loving foundations. Those who embody healing, wholeness, and hope. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate, called to co-create. Come, let us answer that call. Let us worship.
Good afternoon. My name is Laurie Zimmerman, and I'm the Rabbi of Congregation Shaarei Shamayim. On behalf of our congregation, I offer greetings. We've made our home at the First Unitarian Society. We entered into a partnership with your congregation in 2008, and over these 14 years, we've grown to deeply appreciate being in this space. Personally, I feel so grateful to work and meet and worship at the First Unitarian Society because our community shares similar values and approaches to religion. It has been a warm and welcoming place. And now, this installation. I regret not being able to be here in person. Nevertheless, I want to congratulate both Kelly Crocker and Kelly Weisman Asprooth-Jackson on your installation and celebration of your co-ministry. I've known Kelly Crocker for years, probably close to 2 decades. Kelly, I have appreciated you, sometimes from afar, over all this time. You are a smart, powerful, and compassionate leader, committed to social justice and the well-being of your congregation. I am delighted to call you my colleague. And Kelly AJ, as I've heard you called, I've only had the pleasure of meeting you in the last year. I've enjoyed getting to know you and running into you in the hallway. We share much in common, and I really respect the energy and the care that you've brought to this congregation. And as an aside, I was so touched that you came to my daughter's bat mitzvah a few weeks back. As you enjoy the blessings of your community today, I offer the two of you, along with the staff and members of the First Unitarian Society, my own blessing. May you breathe in this moment, abundant with blessing, ripe with awe, overflowing with compassion. May you stand by each other as you embark on this journey. May you foster a culture of cooperation, gratitude, and deep respect for all. and ground your work in an unwavering commitment to others. May you care for yourselves, for your own needs, and for your own souls. May you reach out for support and embrace the love around you. Yehi darkechem mevorach, may your way be blessed. Ya'er alechem or hachochma, may wisdom's light shine upon you. Yiten lachem masechem shalom, may your journey bring you peace. And let us say, Amen.
I bring you greetings from the Unitarian Universalist Association and the MidAmerica region on the occasion of the installation of Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson and Reverend Kelly Crocker as the co-senior ministers of the First Unitarian Society of Madison, Wisconsin, or, as you might say, Team Kelly. I would like to note, however, that my suggestion of Kelly Squared for this ministry team was not accepted, and I have reluctantly come to accept that. My name is the Reverend David Pyle, and I have the honor of serving our congregations as the regional lead for the MidAmerica region of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and also to serve as the UUA staff primary contact for the First Unitarian Society, or, in other words, the first call for your congregational leaders, ministers, and staff for all support from the Unitarian Universalist Association. It was my hope to have been able to be there with you in person for this installation, but a prior commitment in my military ministry as a U.S. Army Reserve chaplain prevented me from being able to do so. I look forward to finding a time to visit in person with your congregation in the coming months. In August of last year, Team Kelly invited me to be with them for their first retreat together, to begin building their shared ministerial relationship. And I knew from that week together that something special was coming into being. In Team Kelly, I have seen an understanding of shared ministry and a deep respect for one another that I wish I was able to say was more common in our congregations. I would like to congratulate the congregation on the discernment and thought that went into deciding to move forward with a shared senior ministry with the Reverends Kelly. And I would like to congratulate the Ministerial Search Committee on the work they did to help envision and to build this ministry team. The First Unitarian Society of Madison can be, and I think should be, considered one of the flagship congregations of our living faith. And taking the step of this installation of co-senior ministers is an example to all of our congregations of both an act of faithful discernment and of finding ways to transform our faith. I am honored to have been part of that journey with you and to look forward to the ways your congregation will continue to live the mission of our faith and bring our Unitarian Universalist values into the world. On behalf of all of the congregations of the MidAmerica region and of the Unitarian Universalist Association, I send you a hearty congratulations and thank you for bringing this ministry team into being. I cannot wait to see what grows from this shared ministry, both between Team Kelly and with you, one of the flagship congregations of both our region and our faith. Good job. Well done, and blessed be.
Well, hey, look at all of you.
Yeah.
Kelly, this is everybody. Everybody, this is Kelly. would like to invite anyone, children, young people, you identify yourself. There's no age limit on this carpet up here. Anyone who'd like to come on up closer for our story, please come on up.
And we'll wait.
We'll wait. Well, yeah, we're good. Oh, good. Our own. Oh, this one's been coming up to the carpet with me for a long time. Oh, hey, Addie. Hi. Welcome to the carpet, sweet one.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're going to tell you a story. A long time ago in Transylvania, where Unitarians have lived for longer than any other place on earth, there was a village. And the Unitarians who lived in that village decided to build themselves a church so that they could have a place where they could practice their religion together. It was a big project, and the whole village came out to work on it. People cut stone and hauled it into place to lay the foundation. They cut trees into timbers for the ceilings. They brushed paint onto the walls. There was all sorts of digging and lifting and carrying and measuring and hammering to do. It took so much work and everyone pitching in together because the people wanted their church to have everything it needed.
Let's think about that for a second. It took all that work because a church needs a bunch of different things in order to be a church. A lot of rooms, a lot of furniture. So let's think, what did they need so that they could have a church? Anybody got any thoughts? Food. They needed a kitchen, right? You gotta have a kitchen if you want to have a church. So they had to make a kitchen and a place where they could cook the food, and a place where they could store the food, a place where they could serve the food and eat the food.
And make the
Coffee. Now what else do you think maybe they needed? Oh, please. They needed a building. Yeah, they needed walls, windows, a roof. That's always a good idea. Not every day is like today. So they had to have a building. Morty, what else do they need?
A chalice.
Needed a chalice. Oh, you can tell
light.
the minister's kid. Not even a plant. Not even prepped for it. They needed a chalice. They needed a place where they could light a flame together in order to symbolize the start and end of the worship service. For sure, for sure. You know what else I think they needed? They needed places for kids to play, right? What's a church without places for children to play and explore and enjoy themselves? Now, okay, we got a pretty good list going. All right. Anybody think of anything else, or are we good? Because a kitchen and places to play and a chalice.
Mike, all the
what do
way
we got,
top,
Mike? Somewhere to play music. Good one. So, you know, a place where they can maybe get some instruments together, maybe do some sing-alongs, just generally enjoy sound together. Artemis, do you have something? Windows. How can we forget the windows, especially here, right? You got to have windows.
Roz over it.
Roz, yeah? You got to have people. Well, you got to have people, so what you got to have is a place for the people to sit, right? They needed a room where everybody could sit comfortably together, and maybe a place for the choir to sing, right? That place to make music that Mike mentioned. And maybe, if they thought about it real hard, a place for their ministers to stand.
Oh, okay.
So they did all of this together.
Max
all this
has got
together.
one. Max, one more over here, Max.
Max, what do you got? Electrical wiring. Well, that is actually a really important note, because this is so long ago. This is important to the story. Remember this for later. This is so long ago that there was no electrical wiring to be had.
What?
So the building was going to have to be a church without electricity. Note that for later in the story.
All right. Well, with a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of hard work and everyone pitching in, they built a church just like that had all of those things, except the electrical wiring. We'll get there. And when the work was done, it was just about sunset, and the people all went home for dinner. And if you'd gone into that building just then, and you explored all the different rooms, you would have seen all the love and the care that went into making it. You would have found all the wonderful details that they put into the spaces, everything just waiting to be used. There's one thing that you wouldn't have seen. It was a long time ago. There wasn't any electrical wiring. There weren't any electric lights. If you wanted light after the sun went down, you had to have fire from a candle, from an oil lamp. And once the building was all finished but empty, there wasn't even one tiny little flame inside. In their sanctuary, that big room with enough space where everyone could sit together, there were holders for oil lamps, but they were empty. So when night fell, the building was completely dark.
But it wasn't dark for long. After the people of the village had eaten their dinner, they didn't want to wait for the morning to enjoy what they had built together. Oh no. So back to their new church they came. Each family, each household carried an oil lamp to light the way in the night. And when they got to the sanctuary, they hung those lamps in all the holders, all around the walls, so that the room was bright even though it was completely dark outside. The people brought the light into the church. And when they went home, they took their lamps back home with them. Now, back home, from then on, the lamps all seemed different somehow. They were just tools before, but now they were reminders. Reminders of the important things that the people shared when they came together to go to church. Reminders about what they gathered to learn, about love and truth. Now, each night when they lit their lamps, or even just looked at them during the day, they had a sense of the connection that they shared with all the other families. The way that church was something they made happen by coming together.
You see, it takes a lot of different things to make a church. Walls and windows and seats, a kitchen, hopefully, a garden if space allows, places for children to play, always. But a building, even the most beautiful one, cannot be a church all by itself, because the light of the church will always and forever come from its people. Thank you. Thank you all for coming up here. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Addie.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
What an occasion. When Team Kelly shared with us about their vision for this service, they brought characteristic crystal clarity of purpose. This event, they insisted, is not a party for them, although this isn't how they put it. They are great. I have known the Kellys for years, but separately. Kelly AJ as a seminary classmate and fellow youth group advisor. And Kelly C as fellow member of a minister support group that offers professional wisdom and frequent maniacal laughter. From so early in your search cycle, it appeared that they could create a kind, functional, and formidable team. But even that, the strong co-senior ministry they have already built, is not the why and what of this installation. Rather, we gather here to announce the shared leadership and collaborative power of these ministers and this congregation together. In the secular world, An installation is the act of placing a thing for use, often just a fancy way of talking about setup. When congregations install, that too is a practical act, but it's also a celebration, a gesture of rejoicing. From the turning and turmoil of transition, a new and settled professional ministry has been placed for use. As the anthem so gorgeously proclaimed on your behalf, it is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
No ministerial transition is easy. Layers. Layers upon layers of complexity, grief, and anxiety, as well as plenty of perilous moments are part of it. Yes, First Unitarian Society was no exception. This transition was longer, more arduous than most of you expected, and a global pandemic that upended every congregation in the world certainly didn't help. Complexity, grief, and peril come with the territory of liminal space, which ministerial transition certainly is. But fortunately, liminal space also includes loads of opportunity and even beauty. It can unleash creativity that just doesn't happen in ordinary times. New ideas, new concepts have an opportunity to germinate and burst forth. So your extended time in liminal space allowed and enabled a beautiful idea, a seed of change to germinate. Instead of simply asking, who might we hire to keep the status quo? You explored how you might structure the ministry of FUS in a way that embodies your deepest values and your longings for this next chapter of FUS's story. So a seed of change, alive from deep within the earth, slowly germinated, and your discernment organically led you to a fresh new model of ministry. So this new model of ministry involved your longtime associate minister, Reverend Kelly Crocker, refashioning her role and her relationship with this congregation as she became co-senior minister. And you found a co-senior minister candidate in Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, who always longed to be part of a thoroughly collaborative model of ministry. And along with Leah, I think they're great too. So I frankly, when I arrived, didn't expect this to emerge during the year of interim ministry I had with you, but emerge it did much to my delight. From this organic process that began long before this day and will slowly continue to grow and evolve as you keep tending it, there is so much to notice today, to name, and to celebrate. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep in the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love.
Organic change, like the congregational process that led to the shared ministry that we honor today, can be hard to spot if it just seems like it's happening naturally. Recognizing it can take experience, but it is a worthwhile noticing. A source of my own personal learning about organic material and process has been the pottery studio, where I am a devoted amateur. Hand building, especially shapes with curves, is my primary area of work. An especially satisfying part of the process is smoothing the clay. It's one of the first things that you have to do. And it's a task which often leads to meditating on the very nature of the material itself. Clay is a kind of soil with very small particles that develops plasticity when wet because it has a molecular film of water that surrounds the little particles. And then when it dries or it gets fired, it becomes hard and brittle. The covert pleasure I get from doing pottery is that my squishy, mud-smelling, organic creations are finite. As someone who works in a helping field and parents 4 school-aged children, thank you. It is a blessing and a miracle to engage in such a boundaried activity. Literally, no one's well-being depends on my clay proficiency, which isn't to say that I don't care about it. I tend to my clay babies with the utmost of care, and sometimes I croon affirmations to them. But after that vase has been rolled, shaped, smoothed, poked, patterned, bisque fired, wax dipped, glazed, wiped, and fired again, it's done completely. There's no structural follow-up. There's no emotional fallout. There's no relational deepening. Sometimes I end up thrilled with the result. So here I took a chance on an old piece of lace and a new to me glaze, and I love how it turned out. This is huge and kind of sloping, and it sits on my kitchen counter. It's my family's fruit bowl, and I use it every day with delight. So occasionally the outcome is awful. I hated this so much that I threw it away after documenting it, apparently in preparation for just this moment. Usually my work lands somewhere in the middle of wonderful and horrible. This is fine, I like it. But it doesn't interest me. But you know what? Each of those suckers is as done can be. The transformation of the organic material out of which they were made is final. This is not how religious communities work. They keep turning. Congregations stay alive. After all, we shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change. Congregational life invites individuals into a network of relationships that grow in complexity. These sometimes cause friction and heartache, but in healthy systems, it allows us each to grow into a piece of a whole that serves something greater than any of us could approach on our own. This kind of collaborative aliveness turns us and our communities so foundationally that none can remain still and separate. Today's great turning, this co-senior ministry, already a flagship within and for the Unitarian Universalist movement, is a turning towards thriving. Congratulations. This is shared ministry at its most encompassing and elemental. This is what it means to lead in love.
The ceramicist's wheel is one of many spheres we encounter. Circles abound. And one truth of all the spheres we encounter and sometimes join is that we always are part of a sphere temporarily. We cycle in, sooner or later we cycle out. Circles call us to understand the truth that each of us is temporary in heartbreaking and healthy and beautiful ways. So leaders take turns leading. Your board presidents lead in that role for a year, and then they cycle out of the position. Called ministers are called indefinitely, meaning that they too eventually do cycle out of the position. The fact of being temporary was as relevant and true for me during my 25-year ministry in Appleton that was settled in my 1-year transitional ministry here. The only unknowns about my eventual departure in Appleton were when and exactly what the reason would be.
To acknowledge that any ministry is temporary and temporal is, in a way, to honor it, to bestow upon it the lasting designation of history. Professional ministries are not alone in having surprising staying power. Recently, ceramic pieces found in a cave in China's Hunan province were determined to be 15,400 to 18,300 years old, at least 1,000 years older than other fragments previously thought to be the world's oldest. With this revelation comes a wealth of information, including about what late Paleolithic foragers ate. Remains of boar, birds, tortoise, fish, and deer are evident. Sorry to the half of Team Kelly who is vegan. And the remains of rice were also found. Paying attention to our story tells us so much, whether we're talking about radiocarbon dating organic material or summarizing eras of ministerial leadership. Our history can beckon us into our future if we attend to it thoughtfully, by applying curiosity toward the past, so that we can glean from it where we might have landed today and might hope to travel tomorrow. We now know rice was being eaten in the Yangtze River basin long before we previously believed it was a source of food. One question this raises is whether it was a wild or domesticated variety. And that's just the beginning of what we might hope to learn and possibly relearn. Absorbing new information always leads us forward. In congregations, that often looks like welcoming in new people and inviting familiar ones into new roles. Kelly C. told me that Kelly A.J. not only immediately joined FUS's Great Turning, but did so enthusiastically and brought to the effort his own wonder, expertise, and heart. About the experience of landing here, Kelly A.J. said that it was like being baked alive in the sense of full and total immersion in the joy, challenge, and identity of FUS. And that getting to do it with Kelly C's stability, care, her wisdom, it makes it a pleasure. Immediately, I saw this community as a potter's kiln, a fiery place where organic materials, strong and flexible enough to be transformed for the better by great heat, can become a sturdy and beautiful vessel. Permanently indestructible? No. But with the power to last longer than we might imagine.
The sense of sharing the ministry feels like it's new, and that it's something that's germinated deep in the earth here for years. Many of you have long sensed and wondered about a kind of consumerist mindset in this congregation, as in, we pay our pledges, and you, the ministers and staff, do most of the work. Rather than sharing in the ministry, sometimes this relationship became more transactional between congregation and staff. And I don't think this was ever actually a good idea. It made too many members' relationship with FUS more superficial, less impactful. And the reality today is that most congregations are in a shift toward fewer paid staff positions. This is the result of long-term economic trends. Each new generation in this country now seems to have less financial capacity than the previous generation. And this new reality is the result of congregations seriously engaging with the ethical question that we engaged in last year together. Is it preferable ethically to pay a large staff wages that aren't fair, or a smaller staff fair wages? So all this means two things, I think, for congregations. One, more folks in the congregations need to move into sharing the ministry, not just with ministers, but with staff. And congregations need to zero in even more on what their core mission is and be willing to let go of that programming which doesn't promote that core mission. So this new ministry that we celebrate today is a thoroughly shared ministry, not just with the two Kellys, but with all of you in this congregation. This is the great turning in which you will together now lead and love together. This is where and how the magic is going to happen. That's what Leah and I experienced when we served together in Appleton. Magic in our collaborative relationship, and magic with the congregation that thoroughly and beautifully, which is not to say without conflict, worked with us to advance together toward fulfilling the congregation's mission. We loved our ministry together, not just because we enjoy and complement each other, complement in both ways, right? But most of all, because of this amazing, magical partnership that we shared with the congregation. May you, not just the two of you, but all of you, be as blessed in your shared ministry as we were.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires.
We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time that we lead ourselves into the well.
It is time now, and what a time, to be alive. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 1054.
I am the Reverend Denise Cawley. My pronouns are she and hers. I serve the congregation in Brookfield, Wisconsin. It is the tradition at installations that we honor these ministers by sharing financial gifts with the Living Tradition Fund of the UUA. Today, our gifts honor this amazing co-ministry team ministry that I believe is the way of the future.
Greetings, everyone. My name is the Reverend Matt Aspin. My pronouns are he and him. And I serve the Prairie UU Society off the Beltway here in Madison, Wisconsin. The 1988 General Assembly established the Living Tradition Fund and requested that ordination and installation services held in member societies include an offering to the fund. That request has become a tradition. The fund distributes scholarships, assistance in reducing a bit of our student loan debt, and emergency grants when disaster or trauma comes to a minister's life. Reverend Denise and I are yet another form of a ministry team. We found one another in seminary, formed a strong friendship, and later became partners. And we have each received help from the Living Tradition Fund. Most ministers in our faith serve small congregations or work in chaplaincy positions with limited funding available. Between Reverend Cawley and I, we left seminary with almost $200,000 in student loan debt. Unlike other denominations, our ministers fund their own path to this call. Even with scholarships, it's exorbitantly expensive to complete 90 graduate credits while doing multiple internships and in many cases supporting our families. As a newer minister, I was able to apply for assistance from the Living Tradition Fund to help with my first year of student loan payments as I was getting established. I never dreamed there would be any help for me, but because of this fund and people just like you, I was able to better care for my family and have some peace of mind as I settled into my new role.
Unitarian Universalism is a life-saving, changing, and growing tradition. We must contribute financial gifts. No one wants to talk about it, but we are the ones who are here to make this the life-saving faith and make sure it continues to be a life-saving faith for every one of us. Because if you're like me, when you came through the doors of a Unitarian Universalist church, your heart was saved. I know mine was. Last year, I was serving a ministry that paid me well below federal poverty levels. I am one of those folks who has pre-existing conditions, and I have tests that must be run on a regular basis. This, combined with the challenge of stepping into a new role during the middle of a global pandemic, parenting a middle schooler on my own, and a couple of unexpected life transitions made life more than I could figure out how to hold. My health care bills, after insurance, totaled more than I made. When things became completely untenable, I wrote a letter to the Living Tradition Fund to ask if there might be any help. I didn't hear back right away, and I kind of forgot about it. And then a month or so later, a check came with a note of support. It came just in time for me to pay my bills and buy my son a new fancy Lego set as a Christmas present. I sat with that check and I bawled. And then I breathed more deeply than I had in ages. I was so relieved. When you think of what ministry Team Kelly will be blessing you with, consider that we are all covenanted as Unitarian Universalists in this life-saving faith. It is not just about this building or the other churches in Wisconsin. It is about all of us, all the way back to Transylvania. Know that behind every minister, there is a community making it possible for them to stand before you. That is the kind of relief and peace your gift can give today.
Now we're going to talk about how. You know, back in the day, it was really easy. You carried around a checkbook, you carried around cash, the basket went around, easy peasy. It's a little more complex today, but that is not an excuse, and that is one thing I really want to point out today. I was taught by my mentor that when the basket comes around, it's a really important spiritual practice, even if you are the minister, to reach in and contribute, because you are reminded that every little bit counts. So for those of you, oh, they have baskets coming around? Wonderful, wonderful. For those of you who are watching online, there is a link to give to the installation that funds the reception following this event, but that is not the link that goes to the Living Tradition Fund. Today, we are asking you specifically to fund the UUA Living Tradition Fund. You can either give online, if you are used to doing that at the traditional online place at fusmadison.org, and you can text to give, and the timestamp will let the counters know that you are giving to this specifically to this amazing fund. And there are baskets that are coming around, or you can send checks payable to the Unitarian Universalist Association with Living Tradition Fund in the memo line. Or you can give online by typing Living Tradition Fund UUA, and a link to give comes up directly. fusmadison.org/installation. We have options for you. And now, go ahead.
Now, don't let all those options stop you, okay? I give you full permission during the next song. You can text to give. You can send yourself an email that you're sending in a check. I don't care. We really need this, because this is how we show the Kellys how you cared in a way, even if it's small, even if it's large, they'll accept stock, house notes, whatever it takes, okay?
Do we take crypto?
Crypto? I bet they could. I bet they could. They'll find a way. Reverend Matt and I thank you for your gifts of peace, because that's what this does. You give out peace. So please give generously. Our faith and our very lives depend on it.
What's that I hear now ringing in my ear? I've heard that sound before. What's that I hear now ringing in my ear? I've heard it more and more. It's the sound of freedom calling, ringing up to the sky. It's the sound of the old ways of falling. You can hear it if you try. You can rumble of the old ways are falling. You can feel it if you try. You can feel it if you try. You can feel it if you try.
No right is more precious to a free congregation than that of choosing its own minister. By the same token, no right is more precious to a Unitarian Universalist minister than choosing the congregation they will serve. The coming together of congregation and minister assumes special significance when there is involved, as here, a great tradition of liberal leadership. It is with profound feeling, therefore, that we formally recognize the relationship now existing between the people of First Unitarian Society of Madison and the Reverend Kelly Jane Crocker and the Reverend Kelly Weisman Asprooth-Jackson, whom we have freely chosen and who have freely chosen us. Will the members of First Unitarian Society of Madison please rise in body or spirit? Are you ready to install Kelly Jane Crocker and Kelly Weisman Asprooth-Jackson as our co-senior ministers? We recognize that this act symbolizes our joining together in covenant. We would have you dwell among us, preaching the truth in freedom and love. We would have you educate our children and counsel our youth. We would have you minister to us in our times of joy and sorrow. We would have you set forth by your example, no less than by your precept, the principles of our free faith. We would have you call attention to the injustice and inequity in our world. We would have you lead us in a mutual quest together toward wholeness. Are you willing to take up these obligations?
We are, with your help.
We, for our part, pledge ourselves to remember that the work of this congregation belongs to all of us. Our purpose in this installation can only be realized if we as a society acknowledge our partnership in this ministry and recognize our shared investment in our congregation and our world. Will you, as members of the First Unitarian Society of Madison, affirm this relationship and this commitment? We will. Having made these commitments to one another, let us now join in the act of installation. We, the congregation of the First Unitarian Society of Madison, accepting our right and affirming your commitment and ability, do hereby install you, Kelly Jane Crocker and Kelly Weisman Asprooth-Jackson, as the co-senior ministers of this society. May your ministry
With humility, gratitude, and joy, we take up the ministry to which you have called us. We pledge ourselves to you, to the history of this congregation, to its present, and to its future. In making this promise, we rededicate ourselves to seek out new truth and old, and to share it widely and freely. We pledge ourselves anew to a love which has no limit, and requires us to do justice, practice mercy, and walk humbly upon the earth. In so doing, we pledge ourselves once more to a work of compassion and co-creation, cooperation and companionship, in the name of all that is holy, and the service of all that lives.
Will all those who have not yet risen, colleagues, family, and friends, please rise in spirit or in body to bear witness to this act of installation? We do hereby affirm this installation and this ministry. May congregation and ministers both be blessed with strength and wisdom in the years of hard and holy work.
I love you.
Shared ministry between colleagues serving the same congregation is a rare and beautiful thing. Like Team Kelly said in the Time for All Ages this morning, it takes a lot of different things to make a church. So each of the three of us, we serve together at the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee, is going to talk about a different piece of shared ministry. I'm the Reverend Jennifer Nordstrom. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I serve as the senior minister of the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee, and I'm going to talk about shared purpose and power. Team Kelly, your highest calling is to stay in connection with what is holy and what is true and alive, to continually discern that in your own lives and in the ministry, and to create access roads to it for your people. In the name of all that is holy, you will serve that holiness and all of life. But in order to do that, you have to stay in touch with it, which, friends, is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do in life, and unfortunately, it's not an easy thing to do in the ministry. There is a lot of work in the ministry that is doing work. Doing things, producing things, creating things. And yet, The true calling is the work of being connected to one another, to love, to the holy. Each congregation will name that calling in a specific way. Here at FUS, you name ethics and spirituality and social issues, all of which are ways that human beings discern what is most important in the world. The work of ministry is to help people continue that discernment. And in order to do it, you have to do it yourselves. Again and again, every day, dusting off the dirt of the world. The systems in which we live are going to try to pull you away from that work. They're going to try to pull all of us away from the holy, including through the work of ministry. The lure of productivity and the glamour of perfectionism it sounds like you know something about that here. They will try to pull you away from the work of staying in relationship, staying connected to your hearts and each other and to the holy itself. I want to say that the work of ministry is to resist that temptation, to resist the idolatry of overwork and perfectionism and productivity. The ministers and the staff and the members of the congregation are not products to be consumed. And it is the work of shared ministry, not just Team Kelly, the work of all of the people of FUS to resist those lures together, resist the glamorization of perfection and productivity. Healthy, alive, juicy, vibrant, shared ministry lives into imperfections and learns how to be human together in the long haul work of living with one another. It's slow, it's messy, it's the work of the soul. Our systems are traumatized by the pandemic, but also the systems that have been working on them this whole time, of productivity and exhaustion, fraying relationship, and systemic overwork. Together, may you hold one another accountable for staying in relationship as the number one priority, with the tasks of ministry coming second. We charge you to maintain your own connection with the holy so that you might continue to create pathways to that connection for the people of FUS. In doing this, I want to just say one note about power. Power is a tool to be used for purpose and nothing else. And it's most effective when you know how to use it. Shared ministry is going to have power dynamics that include your specific social locations. That includes age and race and class and ethnicity and sexual orientation, but also years in ministry and years of relationship with this particular congregation. Power dynamics are just always going to be there, and they can either impede or support your purpose. The power of your similarities can bring comfort and ease and the power of your differences can enrich and strengthen your lives and your ministries. You don't need to eradicate power or ignore it. That's when it can get toxic, when it lives underground and start working in ways you don't intend. Rather, just name it. Own what it is, claim it, understand how it works, and be honest with the congregation about how it's playing out. And that will help you strengthen your shared ministry and your ministry with the congregation.
Am I allowed to touch this thing that's like above my head right now? Okay. Okay. Can you see me yet? Okay, good. My name is Dena McFeeters, and I serve as Associate Minister at First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. And I'm going to talk about shared process, but first I have to say, we had this process. We were going to say the first line all in unison. It was my idea, and then I forgot to do it. So, you got to take all of this with a grain of salt. So, shared process. Shared ministry with a congregation depends on the health of your co-leadership. To keep your partner in ministry healthy, you must understand that the relationship is more important than the work. Should I say that again? Okay, let's say that again. The relationship is more important than the work. The relationship is the work. Let's all say that together. The relationship is the work. All right. And emotional labor counts just as much as any other kind of labor. Keep that in mind. Team Kelly, if you haven't yet, create a covenant with each other to guide and support your co-ministry. Learn what's important to each other in the process of covenanting, because we know covenanting is all about the process and living into it. When you've written your covenant, share it with the staff and the congregation so they know what promises you're making to one another and how you're going to live that out, and then revisit that covenant regularly. Kelly C., you don't have to do everything. I sense some recognition and affirmation in the room. And Kelly AJ, you don't have to do it all. That's what portfolios are for. You each do different things and other work you share, so be clear about what's what and don't try to be a hero. Now for the interactive part, Kelly C. and Kelly AJ, would you please rise and say out loud together, I'll give you the line, we don't have to do everything. You're going to try.
We don't have to do everything.
You heard it here first, okay? And remind them of that. Another part of shared process is to be open to learning as you work side by side and to release each other to work independently, each rooted in your own integrity and authority. And come back to each other, keep in communication with each other. Usually more communication is better than less. Resist triangulation with staff and congregation, and agree between the two of you how you're going to do that. Know how you're going to do that. Have each other's back. Find out what that means to each of you. And notice how trust in each other and in your shared ministry is building and changing. Tell each other about that using examples. We charge you to center the process and respect your relationship.
I'm the Reverend Kimberly Tomczyk Carlson, and I serve as the Minister of Religious Education at the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. Centering your shared purpose of sacred connection, mindfully harnessing the power entrusted in your shared ministry, following the processes necessary to give your partnership a go, will require a shared practice. Practice is routine, practice can be dull, but practice grows. It transforms. Practice is the daily walk you take your soul on. For that practice, that will hold you steady and true when our blue boat rocks you hard. Make a routine of investing in one another, even when it's clumsy. Practice is awkward, and building a partnership always involves some fumbling. Trust in the time you are investing. Trust that that time will do its magic. Lean into that trust, knowing you will find your groove. And when one or both of you drop that beat, practice is the tool that will return you to a common rhythm. Practice vulnerability. Find the space to communicate and respond to each other's needs and to those of your families. Be honest with one another about your shortcomings and risk being known for your gorgeous yet flawed human selves. Find ways to nurture each other's ministry, offer praise super generously, and guidance just thoughtfully. When there is trauma, when there is grief, support one another without hesitation. Let the other know that you are their collegial rock, a safe place to rest, steady, reliable, here to help hold the weight of the world. Make a habit of giving each other space and patience. Do it even when you're running late and you're hangry and you feel out of time. Offer one another that grace and generosity. Schedule fun, and then have fun, and laugh loudly at yourselves and this great adventure you're on. Because laughter reduces stress hormones and boosts immunity, and it enhances the oxygen you can intake, and it's how you find hope in the world. And when you don't know what to do, when you're in the weeds and you're flummoxed, on what practice to employ. Be kind. Just be really kind to one another. You know that kindness is life-saving, life-changing. And compassion has the power to dismantle confusion, clear the way, and find a way forward in a partnership when all is lost. So we charge you to practice what you preach, practice vulnerability, practice laughing, and practice the shared ministry. We charge you to know that this shared ministry is greater than both of you individually. Together, you are more accountable and more capable to guide this community that has entrusted you in the sacred task of service to our great liberal faith.
I'm the Reverend Dr. Scott Prinster. My pronouns are he and him. And it is such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you this afternoon to celebrate the shared ministry of the Reverends Kelly Crocker and Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and to rejoice in your shared ministry with them. This is a moment in the ceremony to share special congratulations and advice to the members of the congregation. Exactly 20 years ago, I met First Unitarian Society at a moment in my career when my belief in the value of ministry had been seriously damaged. But colleagues had convinced me to give ministry another try. Serving as one of your ministers gave me the opportunity to rebuild the trust, affection, and joy that are absolutely necessary to healthy and successful congregational leadership. I will never forget those years of being loved back into wellness here. And it brings me so much joy and hope to see you offering that same gift to a new co-ministry with Kelly and Kelly. There's so much that I'd love to say to you today, but for now, let me make just 3 points. First point, I charge you to recognize the ways in which your shared ministry involves a special and vulnerable kind of relationship. As Leah and Roger noted, we struggle with the temporary nature of ministerial relationships. In fact, there's a lot about a minister's professional expectations that are frustrating for congregations, and even sometimes for ministers ourselves. Part of this difficulty lies in what Buddhist philosophy calls near enemies. That is, unhealthy qualities that resemble healthy values closely enough that we easily confuse the two. For example, the far enemy of compassion is its opposite, cruelty, and we aren't likely to confuse these two. But the near enemy of compassion is pity, and it requires real work to nurture the empathy that keeps compassion from lapsing into pity. I bring this up because ministers are expected to maintain a certain set of guardrails around our connections with congregants. And this is much easier if you also understand these relationships and how they can be toxic if they become the near enemy of a healthy relationship. For example, a minister is somewhat like a therapist, in that we bring psychology, confidentiality, and care to help congregants grow into wholeness. But a healthy minister is not exactly a therapist, and we ministers are taught to remember the difference between these two roles. In the same way, ministers use warmth and friendliness as part of our work to build respectful and meaningful community. But the minister is not exactly a friend. The ministerial relationship cannot be completely reciprocal, and they must be able to make decisions that are best for the whole congregation without the fear that individuals will retaliate out of hurt feelings. The friendship that we have between peers is not the same as the professional relationship that a minister has with their members. All of this is to remind you that Kelly and Kelly are being installed into roles that are unlike any other relationship in your lives. And with this comes unique challenges and unique possibilities. Second point, I charge you to help your ministers in holding the container. What makes all this possible? The unique opportunities of shared ministry, the audaciousness of the free religious tradition, even this joyous celebration. What makes all of this possible are the guardrails. Your ministers are called to maintain certain boundaries, what I call holding the container around the congregation and its activities. These are the safety net that makes it possible for this institution to be a safe place, a fair place, a kind place. I cannot say this bluntly enough. The success and the health of this congregation, like all our congregations, depends on the integrity of this container. We are able to exercise religious freedom because we know that this safety net is there. We are able to explore and bless new models of identity and relationship and service because these guardrails are maintained. Without the container, this freedom, this exploration, this celebration all run the risk of becoming destructively self-serving. And although your ministers may lead you in maintaining the walls of this container, this work is only possible with your collaboration. In our religious tradition, ministers cannot simply command it on their own. Remember that this is the congregation of the stone haulers. This is a congregation where volunteers turned out in droves to educate generations of our children. And this is a congregation where hundreds of members have stepped out of their comfort zone to do good work in the world on our behalf. Third point, I charge you to reach out to support and be supported. The mental exhaustion and the grief we feel after 2.5 years of a worldwide pandemic, the horrors of war in Eastern Europe, the incessant attacks on human rights and privacy in the United States, still more mass shootings in our communities just this week, all against the looming background of global climate change. Well, it's a lot. And it would be easy in such a time to withdraw into self-interest and smallness of heart. One of the challenges of Unitarian Universalism is that we have inherited toxic versions of individualism from our white New England forebears, in which we regularly overlook that we are literally all in this together. We forget how deeply we need one another. But just because this is part of our inheritance doesn't mean that we're stuck with it. I came to this place 20 years ago, burned badly enough by my previous ministry that I was ready to throw in the towel. And as I said earlier, the members of First Unitarian Society insistently led me back into the trust, transparency, and affection needed for the healthy years of ministry we had together. If there's nothing else that you take away from today's celebration, when you and your ministers are surrounded by colleagues and guests who want nothing but the best brightest future for you, I want you to remember this. Our survival will depend on our willingness to reach out. As individuals to our neighbors, as one community of seekers to other congregations and to our movement, to be reminded that none of us alone has all the answers and resources we need, no matter how easily we might lapse into that illusion. And so I want to congratulate you and celebrate you at this liminal moment, because our installation of this co-ministry is about all of you as much as Kelly and Kelly. I can only end with the words I spoke so many times from this pulpit by my colleague, the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. May it be so.
I'm Reverend Emily Gage. I serve at Unity Temple Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Oak Park, Illinois. You know, the other Frank Lloyd Wright building. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I've been at this ministry thing for a long time, and the longer I'm at it, the more in awe of and humbled by this unlikely adventure that we engage in as congregations. And thus, the more I find the need to pray. Let us unite our hearts and minds in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, eternal, holy mystery of the universe, we give great thanks for the gift of this day, this glorious day, for the continued history of this beloved congregation, for an institution and people that have been a beacon of liberal religion. May they continue to shine their light of love and evolving truth in all the days to come. We give thanks for this installation ceremony of co-senior ministers, for the vision of leadership this represents. May they embody a shared ministry of mutual care and kindness and collaboration. We offer our deepest gratitude for Kelly and Kelly, honoring the journey that has brought each of them to this day, knowing they are already wise in the incredible joy and occasional tedium and great heartbreak of ministry. May they seek to expand their wisdom and perspective as this new chapter unfolds. We bless all who witness this event, knowing that we are an interconnected web of community, each encountering the mixed-up beauty and challenge of our days independently and together. May our minds and hearts burst open ever more deeply to one another, to this congregation, and to life itself. And whatever comes our way, may we always, always be guided by love. Amen. Blessed be.
It's been a long, a hard night. it's gonna be okay. 'Cause I can see the light of a clear blue morning. I can see the light of a brand new day. I can see the light of a brand new morning. And everything's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay. 'Cause I can see the light of a clear blue morning. I can see the light of a brand new day. I can see the light of a brand new morning. And everything's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay. I can see the light of a clear blue morning. I can see the light of a brand new day. I can see the light of a clear blue be alright. Be alright. It's a brand new day.
How are y'all doing? I am the Reverend Carin Armina. My pronouns are she and her, and I serve the James Reeb UU congregation across the Isthmus. I am so pleased and honored to be here, to be asked to be part of this service, this celebration. Because co-ministry is a thing that I have aspired to here with my Madison colleagues the time I have been here. Thank you. There are occasions, particularly in religious ritual, where we reach for tangible symbols for that which moves us invisibly, that moves within us, and that moves between us. Sufis, whirling in physically active meditation. Christians, using water in baptism in recognition of the gift of grace that Jesus offered. Jews, eating apples and honey on Rosh Hashanah in their hope to be granted a sweet new year. Pagans, placing symbols of earth and air and fire and water onto altars in recognition that we share the human qualities of connection, intellect, passion, and emotion. The laying on of hands is an ancient tradition that originated from interpretation of the Christian scriptures to commission and commend the spiritual leaders of the community through the grace of the Holy Spirit of the triune God. It is a tangible symbol of the Holy Spirit being moved through the community as church leaders use physical touch to represent the channels through which the Spirit moves. Unitarian Universalism is a living tradition, one that moves and changes as wisdom is gained from many, many sources. We have inherited this tradition of the laying on of hands from our Christian forebears, and we have shaped it to resonate with our evolving theology and our understanding of shared ministry. I understand it as a symbol of the interconnected web of which we are all a part, and of the spirit of life and love that forms the threads of that web and moves among us. We have shifted the symbolism from the traditional Christian idea so that all members of a religious community embody that spirit together. And all are asked to come together to form this symbolic web. In a few minutes, I will invite all of you, to participate in forming a physical web connected to Kelly, and to offer them your blessings. And evolving theology manifests in changing tradition in other tangible ways. Evolving times as well. One of the most compelling reasons I have seen for changes in recent times is the call to be welcoming and affirming to all people, which requires us to learn about the needs of all people, to open our hearts, to seek to shift our frames, to learn how we might change, to be more inclusive, more welcoming. We've had plenty of practice at this over the last 2.5 years, as we have had to learn to balance the needs for protection from a deadly virus with the needs for connection and community. Touch is a tricky thing. It is a way that humans have expressed connection throughout our history, which is why it has become important in this particular ritual. Touch is deeply comforting to some, and it is deeply disconcerting to some. In today's world, many of us are finally learning to take the idea of consensual touch seriously, to understand some of the impacts of unwanted touch, and to acknowledge and accommodate the needs of different people for personal space, for comfort with touch, and now for social distancing. And so today, we reshape this tradition just a little bit as we work toward greater inclusivity. So I invite us to participate in laying hands on the Reverends Kelly as part of installing them as the co-ministers for this congregation with symbolic touch as well as physical. As your ministers come forward and move into a kneeling position, I'm sorry, I thought there were going to be cushions. I invite any of you who want to be part of this ceremony without touching anyone, without being touched, and those of you who cannot, because of the limitations of our technology, be touching anyone in this room. I invite you to move to the edges of the room, to the side of the room, to the front of the room. Now, stand there and hold your hands up in a blessing. The rest of you will also be moving. This is for the folks who don't want to be touched. And I think that for the folks up on the balcony, right? To try to connect you down to here. I invite any of you attending this service virtually to do the same. Rise in body and or spirit. And send the energy of your blessings this way. While that's happening, I invite Kelly and Kelly to lay a hand each on the other's shoulder and take a breath. And Kelly's families, some of whom look like are already here, come forward. Into this space they are kneeling. Place a hand on them or on each other if you can't reach them. Thank you. And take a breath. I invite Kelly's colleagues in ministry to come forward, those of you who are comfortable with touch. And lay your hands on the web we are creating. And help form the web as it can be embodied today. And take a breath. And all the rest of you who wish to be part of the touching web, the close-up web, come forward. Lay your hand gently on a shoulder. Come as close as you are comfortable. What was it you said, Jennifer? Messy? Yeah. And take a breath. If you're on the edge of the room with your arms up, if you're on the other side of a screen, send the energy that you are feeling so that you are part of this web, as you know you are. And now I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. O Holy Spirit of life and love that moves within and between us, God of our hearts, we are here today to affirm the ministry, the shared ministry of Kelly Crocker and Kelly Asprooth-Jackson among us, with us. We are so very grateful to have been touched by their care, to have shared our thoughts and our hearts with them, to have worked with them to seek justice, to build beloved community, to have been part of their journey toward this beautiful new co-ministry. We are here this afternoon to offer our blessings and our trust to Kelly and Kelly, bound by the love that holds us all May we know each other as precious incarnations of that love. May Kelly and Kelly feel that love, moving among us now and in all they do and all they are in service to this congregation and this community. May they be inspired by it as they build this new ministry with you. May they be buoyed by it when the work is hard. May they be guided by it in all things. And may we be ever present to it, to remind them and each other of its spirit moving among us always. I invite us now into just a few moments of quiet and shared awareness of our own spirits, the presence of all around us, and the love around us and between us. May it be so, and may we be so. I invite us now to move slowly and carefully back to our seats.
I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our final hymn, 1064, Blue Boat Home. Far away from
been one of humbling exuberance and blessed anticipation. But despite all appearances to the contrary, today was never about the two of us. Rather, this ceremony has been one more chapter in the story of a people who are driven by a free faith to build a just world and a loving community. Together, we have honored the history of this congregation, consecrated its present, and now anticipate its future.
In the glow of this joyful moment, we charge you, as we charge each other and ourselves, to take up the shared ministry that a love without limit, a broken-hearted world, and our own restless spirits together cry out for, to seek out new truth and old, and to share it widely and freely, to do justice, practice mercy, and walk humbly upon the earth, to practice compassion and co-creation, cooperation and companionship, in the name of all that is holy and the service of all that lives.
This quest itself is very, very old. We are not the first to take it up, and we hope never to be the last. But at this time, and for all the rest of our days, the struggle is ours as well. Therefore, friends, let us go out and begin, and blessed may we be in the holy work of living. Blessed be, go in peace. Thank you. And please be seated for the posters.